But let's start drifting down the Nile discussing. Feel free. Tangents are welcome. Questions are welcome. I have not prepared much at all, but we're going to talk about the 17th Dynasty. So I'm honestly just going to pull up the 17th Dynasty Wikipedia, and then I have kind of the Wikipedia sources for the royalty of the Theban part of this dynasty, but I'll give you guys some of the background and stuff if you don't know it. So the 17th Dynasty is during the last dynasty of the second intermediate period. Intermediate periods are those in-between periods between these kind of really high highs of power, wealth, expansion, and these are kind of the low points. And we don't like describing them as low points, obviously, because it's not the best to always, people used to say, oh, these are the dark ages of Egypt, and it's not the best because, like, just because we don't know a lot and not a lot of stuff was preserved doesn't always mean that it was a dark age. And so I try not to talk about the intermediate periods negatively, but we try. And essentially during this period is also when the Hyksos are ruling in the 15th and the 16th dynasties. Those two dynasties are happening the exact same time as the 17th dynasty, which is not totally rare. I think there's one, maybe two other instances of this happening, but where we have these overlapping dynasties. But this is the most famous and the most notable of all of those, where the Hyksos are ruling up north in the Delta, and then everything at the bottom on the southern side of Egypt was ruled by the 17th dynasty Theban pharaohs, who were quote unquote the native Egyptians rather than the Hyksos people who had moved in. True, Claire, true. I like thinking of like that rather than the Dark Ages are when everyone was like dumb and poor. A lot of talk of the Dark Ages being like, it's just like a sad, everyone's dumb, everyone's lost all the knowledge that we've had for millennia, and it's kind of, I don't like thinking about it like that, but yeah, it's just we haven't shed enough light on it to really show. The cyclical. Yeah. So the 17th dynasty, as it says here, the chronology is a little uncertain. King's List have provided kind of little help, and so again, we are all trying to shed some light on this time period. And we'll look at the list of kings, but the main guys we're going to talk about are the last kings who ruled this dynasty, as well as some of the queens and some of the daughters and kind of that royal family of the last pharaohs. Apparently I realize there's some sort of theory that they had Nubian ancestry, which apparently is about evidence of the skull, which I'm just going to throw away because that's not the greatest evidence. And for anyone who wants to know actual dates, this is around 1580 to 1550. It's a pretty short period. So about 30 years, here's a good map. Of the Hyksos and everything else that's going on. I know. I'll read this out for Mark. Some mainstream scholars have suggested the 17th dynasty of Egypt had Nubian ancestry due to expanded presence of Nubians in Egypt during that time period, and the craniofacial evidence from X-ray examination of Senkeneri Tau, who displayed strong affinities with contemporary Nubians. Donald Redford explicitly argues that Egyptians entered into the service of the king of Kush between the 17th and 16th centuries BCE, citing historical texts along with archaeological evidence that shows an increased Nubian presence from the third cataract of the Nile as far north as Deir Rifa. Redford summarizes that a shared community of interest existed, which coincided with the influx of Nubian pottery and weapons in Upper Egypt. No conclusive evidence that the founder of this dynasty, a guy named Ahhotep, was of Nubian origin, however. The dynasty is recognized as a native Egyptian dynasty by many scholars. So, hello, Pumpkin the cat. But yeah, so apparently there is some craniofacial evidence. We'll look at Senkeneri Tau in a second, but yeah, and it also says affinities to contemporary Nubians, which is like nothing. So not the best. But we'll look at him in a second. We'll see if there's any more studies about him. Thank you, Claire. So these are all the sort of pharaohs that we know of, and some of these we don't know a lot about. You can see when they have question marks around it, it's always kind of fun. So Ahhotep is the founder of this dynasty. Looks like here's a little picture of him depicting the pharaoh Ahhotep offering Osiris for 2 deceased people, dated to year 1 of Ahhotep. Then we got Sobek Emsaf the first. He's got a pretty nice big statue. He performed extensive renovation works at the Temple of Montu in Madamud. Sobek Emsaf the second. It looks like, surprisingly, these pharaohs are buried in Dra Abu al-Naga, where Dra Abu al-Naga is not a royal, by any means, a royal necropolis. It's in Thebes. It's across the I always say across the street. It's not across the street. It's across the river from like modern Thebes. But Dra Abu al-Naga is not particularly a royal place. Obviously for these guys it was, because you also have to remember this is before the Valley of the Kings. So the Valley of the Kings and the Valley of the Queens was not in use at this time, because that is New Kingdom. So this is a time period, this is before Hatshepsut, this is before Tut, this is before Akhenaten, this is before the Ramessides, this is all prep after that, before this. And so Thebes was, I always try to remember, I think Thebes might have been sometimes the capital in the Middle Kingdom, but I don't think it doesn't become a huge, like, big capital until the New Kingdom. And possibly during this time period as well, because they can't go any north. They can't go up to Memphis, which was the capital for such a long time, because I'm pretty sure the Hyksos took it over at some point, even though their capital, Avaris, is way up there in the Delta. Very good question, Pumpkin the Cat. The beards, the beard is a fake beard. It is not a real beard. For the most part, Egyptian men went shaved. And the beard is a sign of nobility. It's a sign that he is a pharaoh. And so it literally is like a fake beard. And there are some instances where you can actually see the strap that would go along the side and would somehow like tie up behind his ears or on top of his head. But yeah, the beard is a symbol of his power as pharaoh. Which is why you do see Hatshepsut wearing a beard, even when she is depicted more female, because she knows that it is a symbol of a pharaoh and a symbol of power. But it's not always the case. You don't always see it. Like, for instance, this is this guy's coffin, and he doesn't have the beard, so it's not always seen. The uraeus on top of the head is also extremely important. It's uraeus is a snake. It's a snake, and then it's sometimes a snake and a cobra. And then this Nemes headdress as well is also a symbol of him being a pharaoh and power. So this is Intef, surprisingly Intef the fifth. Intef the fifth, Intef the sixth. He's got a see, and the very interesting thing that you can kind of see is that, like, even though we have very little like the amount of objects coming from this time period, like, this is gilded, this has got gold on it. Like, this in itself is like a kind of proof that, like, Egypt had, like, these native Egyptians in this smaller section. Sorry guys, I cannot stop yawning. These guys who are ruling have enough power to go and get gold, presumably from Nubia, which is where most of the gold in Egypt came from. But you'll also notice that the style of the art is not very standardized. And you can tell, like, these two I think look very similar, though different. But this one is not, it's not really into proportions or anything like that. Do we have the gaps? Do we see times where the civilization fell? Yes. Yeah. Those are what we call the intermediate periods. So there are 3 in ancient Egypt. There's the first, the second, and the third. So we're talking about the second right now. And in some cases, obviously, that this Egypt had, about 5,000 years. So going from about 3,000 BC, so 3000 BCE is closer to when it was united and, like, more powerful. So, like, King Narmer is around 3000 BCE. So it's closer to 3,000 years, but the ancient Egyptian civilization and the pre-dynastic, like, goes back to 7,000. So it does, if you want to include all of the early pre-dynastic stuff, yes, it's about 5,000. When you want to talk about the civilization, like all of the things that make up a civilization, you would usually do 3,000 BCE to about 3 to 400 CE, but that also pushes it deeper kind of into the Roman era. There's no weird, it's kind of strange. Some people will cut off at Ptolemaic Egypt, so at, like, the death of Cleopatra VII. But some people will extend it to the Romans, and some people will, but they just don't give it's a very vague date of when ancient Egypt ends. Some people might say, when the Roman Empire becomes Christianized, like when they start, accepting, Christianity, that is, like, a big change, but there's just no kind of cutoff date and stuff. So Ptolemies go for about 300 years from about 332 to 30 BCE. Or sorry, no. Wait a second. Yes. 332 at the death of Alexander the Great in 332 BCE to about 30 BCE at the death of Cleopatra VII. That is the Ptolemaic era, and then you can kind of go. You don't have to go that far into it. Sometimes you just have to go into, like, the 100 in AD or in CE. Hello, Queen. How are you? Welcome to the discussion. OBS, why can't I scroll? You're being very stupid right now. There we go. I missed Kepper's message. I'm coming back, Kepper. I'm coming back. Yeah, Kepper. It's hard to tell exactly when that actually happens, though, because there are a lot of options as to why a nose might be knocked off. The other option is that the statue fell over and the nose gets knocked off. So I don't like ever saying kind of absolutes that when you are missing a nose, that it's doing it spiritually. I kind of put it very vaguely. So the quick thing, Claire, is that Alexander the Great dies Alexander the Great takes over. No, wait, backing up. In the late period in ancient Egypt, the Persians take over Egypt. They actually take over Egypt twice. Native Egyptians come back and take it over again, and then the Persians come and take it back again. Then Alexander the Great comes in, takes over the Persian Empire, and thus takes Egypt with him. And then he dies in 323. The Ptolemies rule from 323 to 30 BCE. And it started off with a Greek general of Alexander the Great named Ptolemy. And so it's really that they split the entire Greek Empire into little bits, and different generals of Alexander the Great are ruling different sections. Thank you, Pumpkin the Cat. I only knew that because I looked at my cheat sheet 2 seconds ago. But yes, those are the easy ones, weirdly, is Alexander the Great and Cleopatra. Because those ones, unfortunately, are exact. When it comes to other ancient Egyptian pharaohs, they're all vague. Those are like ones that are like more exact. We know the year that he died and we know the year that she died. So it's a little easier to remember those ones. So Ptolemy, this Greek general, he's just sort of meant to rule this section of this whole empire with all of the other generals. And then they totally just decide, never mind, we're just gonna go for it, and he just kind of rules Egypt on his own. And then his descendants, which are all the pharaohs, are named Ptolemy, and all of the queens and princesses are all named Cleopatra, Bernice, or Arsinoe. All of them. It's like literally all of them. And then you get to Cleopatra. Cleopatra has a love child with Julius Caesar. Then she has 3 children with Mark Antony, 2 Roman guys, and then convinces Mark Antony to try to take more land, to expand Egypt, to make Egypt this amazing empire, and they fail miserably at the Battle of Actium. Actium? I think it's Actium. And that is true. Titus I started rewatching Rome a couple like months ago, and I was like, God, this show is so weird and so bad. But yes, Actium. Okay, yeah. So after that, then essentially Rome just absorbs it into their empire, and Augustus is the first, Octavian, then Augustus is the first one to rule it. And so then it just goes under the Roman emperors. There's really nobody else. I don't even know if they might have had a governor or something. I really like Rome. I do really like Rome. It's just a little cheesy sometimes. I was watching it and I was just like, well, so I do really like Rome because I describe it as a weird Forrest Gump of the Roman Empire, but it's just like a little cheesy. I was rewatching it and I was just like, the guys are kind of dumb. Like that guy, that what's his name? That's freaking Owen from Grey's Anatomy didn't realize that his wife cheated on him with, it's just like, and had a baby, is like so stupid. I know, Lucius. He will forever be Owen from Grey's Anatomy though, because I definitely, Varenus, yeah. Oh my God. It's like, it's silly and it's interesting. It's kind of, I will say, I think what the thing that gave me, it's not an ick, but the thing that made me stop watching it when I was doing my rewatch was the juxtaposition between this actual story of like Titus Pullo and Varenus, and they like have most of everything they do has like some sort of comic relief and is like kind of funny, kind of cheesy, and just like, it doesn't really seem like it's set in reality. But then you watch the actual things that are going on, like with Octavius and his mother and his sister, and all of that is, I feel like I'm watching like a Downton Abbey or a Gilded Age or something. Like I'm actually watching like a historical fiction show. And I think the juxtaposition of that really like threw me off when I started my rewatch, and I was like, oh, okay. It just wasn't as gripping to me the second time watching it, I'll say. I think the dichotomy is good, but I think watching it a second time, it wasn't as, it wasn't surprising. I don't know. I think I also just kind of got bored and forgot. I am very bad at, I haven't been able to like really, I've only been able to watch like a couple, like literally the only shows I've been able to watch are The Gilded Age and, like Game Changer. Like those are the only 2 shows that I've been able to like actually watch new and like live. Oh, which one? I want to know. Okay, the corn nuts are out, guys. So excuse the chewing. Okay. Again, feel free to ask questions. We're gonna keep going through these 17th Dynasty pharaohs. So you got Intef the 5th, Intef the 6th, Intef the 7th. And then you got Ahmose the Elder. And then you have Tau and Kamos, which these are the guys that we're going to talk about most. And then we also have some guy named Nebmat-Re, who might have ruled during this time period. But you can also see how they are actually all sort of related. So these guys are related. Sobekemsaf the first to the second to Intef, Intef the fifth, Intef the sixth, and Intef the seventh. So it's actually, it goes from brother to brother and then to son, which is interesting. But then for some reason, it appears these three people are probably related, but apparently not related to the first group of pharaohs of this time period. Ooh! That sounds interesting. I might watch that. What channel is, or is it on a streaming service? Alright. So, this is what Egypt looked like. Oh, I have heard of this, I think. My, one of my very good friends has the biggest crush on Anthony Hopkins, and she's not ashamed of it. It's crazy. Damn Peacock! I don't have Peacock! God damn it. Can't pay for anything. Okay, so we have here the map of Egypt. Avaris is way up here. You have Memphis and Ititawi, which are two really big capital cities. You have the Fayum Oasis. And we know the Hyksos came over here, settled. And then eventually you do get the fight kind of between the two. As well as Kush here at the bottom, the Kingdom of Kush coming up. But the Theban dynasty probably owned about like kind of this middle section. Somewhere up around here is Beni Hassan. And Beni Hassan is the capital of the Oryx nome, which are like a nome is like a state sort of within. And the Oryx nome, Beni Hassan now, there's no real like preserved settlement or anything, but there are a lot of preserved tombs from the governors of this nome. And a lot of the governors, we know from a lot of the writings in the tombs, that the governors were resistant and stayed very neutral in between the Hyksos and the Theban dynasty of the 17th dynasty. And they were very kind of neutral. They really didn't want to kind of get involved back and forth. But we do know that finally there is Baket III, who was a governor. We know from his writings that he finally was kind of the person to break this neutrality and went and stood alongside the Thebans instead of the Hyksos from the north and such. Sorry, Claire. I'm answering your question. Yeah, so there are some times where we do have like sort of civil wars in between different groups, and early in the early dynastic period, the unifying of Egypt, there was a lot of fighting. This one in particular is an interesting circumstance. So normally dynasties, they go this dynasty, this dynasty, this dynasty. What was happening now is we have the 15th and the 16th dynasties only ruling in the north of Egypt, and they are called the Hyksos people. And the Hyksos are not Egyptian. There is definitely some probably mixing with Egyptians that were living in this area, but the Hyksos were mainly what has been now determined as a Canaanite group, so a group coming from the Levant, somewhere generally Israel, Palestine, like somewhere generally in that area, with actually some speculation even going more north to like northern Syria and eastern Turkey. And that for a long time they thought that they were invaders, and that is then why they fought the Theban dynasty. But we have now sort of determined that they settled that because excuse me, because the sorry, choking my corn nut. Because there was not a lot of power in this time period, because when the Middle Kingdom broke up, the country was particularly weak, this group just came in and settled in the Delta, in this city, and then founded this city called Avaris. And then, eventually, they wanted more, and they fought against the Thebans. Although it is unclear, potentially the Thebans came in and said, we want more, and that is why they fought together. Pumpkin Cat? I caution myself to say that there are no dumb questions. So please ask away. Ask away. Sorry, I really choked on that corn nut. Scratched my throat. I have not, but I do know that I have heard of some fiction books that happen during this time period. Scroll back down to where I was. I know. I can feel it in the back of my throat. I'm fine, I promise. I'm fine. It just scratched my throat. I think it's on the roof of my mouth. I think that's the problem. Okay. So it doesn't appear that like this fighting happened throughout this entire second intermediate period. It really seems to have happened really only at the very, very end. And when you look at like the entire list of all of these pharaohs, it only happened during the rule of these last two pharaohs. So around the 1560s to 1550s, the last potentially about 10 years of this time period. So while under the Hyksos rule, the kings of the 17th Dynasty revived the cult of Osiris. They rebuilt temples. They established military control over religious sites in Abydos, which is just north. You can see it here on the map. Abydos is just north of there. They were essentially, it is more than likely that the Thebans wanted to reunify all of Egypt, and that they were going to be the aggressors, and they were going to try to take back the north from the Hyksos. It is more than likely that it seems that was the way that this was going to run, rather than the Hyksos attacking the Thebans. Because the Hyksos had potentially been there since the Middle Kingdom, had been there much earlier than we are expecting, and had settled in that area. And it just took them essentially to notice that, hey, we haven't heard from the pharaoh. Sorry. It's like, hey, we haven't heard from the pharaoh at all. Doesn't seem like he's around much. Like, we should just essentially form our own, like, government. Not government, but like we should just have our own king, sort of, kind of thing. So the first wave of attacks launched toward the southern flank was led by King Senkeneri Tau, who was killed in battle, and we're going to talk about that when we talk about him a little bit. His son Kamos succeeded him as the leader. After securing the southern flank, Kamos took to the north to fight more of the Hyksos. Despite a little sustained opposition, he failed to take more land in the north and died suddenly just after 2 years on the throne. It is also possible that Kamos died in battle, or in some sort of associated death. And then he left no sons behind, so it went to his brother, Ahmose the First, who came to power when he was very young. This says 10 years old. And he, you can see, is not in this chart because he technically is the one who then goes up and starts the new kingdom. He is able to secure the land in the north, and he becomes the first pharaoh of the new kingdom and the 18th dynasty. Technically, though, he obviously was ruling during what you would consider the 17th dynasty. It would sort of be split from when he started ruling to when he defeated the Hyksos, and that would be the separation of these two time periods. Oh, Pumpkin Cat. Yeah, so it's about the Amarna period. I know so much about the Amarna period, so I definitely should read that. You said it's called The Egyptian? I gotta write that down. If you like that book, I would recommend the book Nefertiti by Michelle Moran. That is my favorite book of all time, and it is also set in that time period, but it has a very interesting perspective because it is not in the perspective of Nefertiti, but the perspective of her younger sister, Walteri. We've actually never done a formal lecture of the Amarna period, but we did 7 discussion streams about the Amarna period when we started this last year. And because I haven't been able to get on top of filming a huge batch of TikTok videos, I haven't been able to I've been wanting to post my discussion streams as well on YouTube, and I just haven't gotten around to editing those yet. Because I focused on the actual lectures. So next time I get a big batch of TikToks done so that I have just like time where I don't have to worry about writing or scripting or filming, that's when I am going to use it to edit a lot of the videos. I just haven't gotten there yet, sadly, since like February, which sucks. Eventually Ahmose the First goes up north, conquers the city of Memphis, and then, I know, I've been busy and I've been annoyed by it. So they continue on to conquer Memphis. They go up to Sahu-Ren, which is... which is in Gaza. It's actually in the Levant. I didn't realize that was there. And they laid siege to that city for 3 years. I didn't know this, actually. Yeah, and so then they defeat the Hyksos. The Hyksos people probably dispersed. That they probably still existed in lots of areas, but they just didn't have obviously that ruling group. There is a full lecture about the Hyksos that is on my YouTube. If you want to learn more about the other side of this, we can definitely watch that lecture because it is really good. I was pretty proud of that one, to talk about all the Hyksos and everything. But let's talk about, let's jump to Senkenri Tao first, because he's a pretty cool guy to learn a little bit about. So you will hear him as a lot of weird different names. So Sekenenre Tao, or Sekenera Jehudi or you'll also hear Ta instead of Tao, which Tao doesn't make sense because there is no O sound in ancient Egyptian, so it should make sense. Yeah, that was very weird. That's why I didn't read it aloud. But I didn't read that word aloud because I was like, that's a weird word to use in that context, but okay. So Senkenenre, I'm never gonna say that actually right. Sekenenre Tao was one of the last pharaohs of the 17th Dynasty. He's honestly one of the more important ones of this dynasty, and We also have a little bit more evidence because we do have his mummy. And so we know a little bit more about him. We assume that he was the son and successor of this guy named Ahmose the Elder. We apparently don't know a lot about Ahmose the Elder. But we do know a little bit about Queen Teddy Sherry, who was a matriarch and possibly held either a pharaonic position or a regent position for Seqenenre. I need to say it correctly. Seqenenre Tao. We are going to talk about his wife, Ahhotep, and their children. And we do know about, I have mentioned obviously Kamose and Ahmose, but there are a couple other ones that we do know a little bit about as well that we're going to talk about. So he probably was ruling around 1560 or 1558 BCE. And this is one of the things I want to talk about, which is really funny, is that there is, in the New Kingdom, so after this time period, there is a literature story that is called The Quarrel of Apophis and Seqenenre. And it is sort of seems like that it is a story about, it's a fictional story about Seqenenre fighting the Hyksos. And so it's got a very interesting kind of like weirdness where it's like sort of seems like a mythical story, but it's based on possibly a real thing. So the story essentially is in which the Hyksos king Ahhotep, which is the actual name for a Hyksos king, which is why it's especially important, and that is the same thing as Apophis, and that is this big giant snake god who's like super super evil and such. Jack, I am so sorry. I do not know. That is not my specialty. I am an Egyptologist, so I do not know why we have magnetic poles. And I'm sorry, there are no alien gods in ancient Egypt, so I don't know which god you are talking about. But thank you for your question. So Ahhotep and Apophis are the same thing. There's the Egyptian and Greek name, and it is this giant snake that is like the devourer of worlds. It is kind of the ultimate villain in all of Egyptian mythology. But surprisingly, this ancient Hyksos pharaoh was named Ahhotep, which is very odd and very interesting. And you could go into a whole deep thing as to why you would name yourself this, or you would name your child this. And so we have this story that is talking about an actual Hyksos king that is presumably like actually like was the one who was fighting against Seqenenre, and we actually have Seqenenre. So they're not giving fake names, they're giving like two actual names of two pharaohs that actually fought together. Yeah, there is ancient history all across the world, but my specialty is Egypt. So I only know about ancient Egypt and history, archaeology, and such. I know a little bit about Greece and Rome, and a little bit about like ancient Mesopotamia, like Iran, Iraq, but not as much. Egypt is my specialty. Hello, Hector. Welcome on in. We are talking about the 17th Dynasty pharaohs from the Second Intermediate Period in Egypt. These are the pharaohs that were ruling out of Thebes and fought against the Hyksos people. And we're talking right now about Seqenenre Tao and this funny little story called The Quarrel of Apophis and Seqenenre. Thank you so much, Jack, for the follow. Welcome on in. So in the story, which again, the story is dated later, it is discovered later, so it is literally almost like recounting the actual history, but in the form of a legend, which is very interesting. And so they say, which the Hyksos king Ahhotep sent a messenger to Seqenenre in Thebes to demand that the Theban hippopotamus be done away with, because the noise of this beast was so loud that he was unable to sleep in Avaris. So the funniest part about this is that, like, literally this story is explaining that the entire quarrel between the Thebans and the Hyksos people is that the Hyksos people were very annoyed that the Theban hippos were very loud and that they could hear them from, like, obviously thousands and thousands of miles away. And essentially, there's very little historical information, but it tells you kind of about this divide. It does also put all the blame onto the Hyksos for kind of wanting this fight, but that's kind of typical for ancient Egyptian stories to not paint Egypt as the villain, because only the winners write the stories. I am in the United States of America. So this is a very interesting story that, like, does have its basis in truth, and actually has the actual names rather than it being more of like an allegory or like something where they just have fake names. Like, they're actually using the names of the real pharaohs. And because it's happening in the New Kingdom, this tells us, oh wait, like this conflict was important enough that people were remembering this for hundreds of years later, which is very interesting to kind of think about. We're going to talk about his mummy in just a sec. So he did build a new palace in Deir el-Balas, which is near Thebes. And we know that there was a lot of this, what we call Kerma ware. So coming from the area of Kerma, which is, was the capital of the Kushite Empire in the south. And so this is, again, bringing up this kind of thought that at this time, because the Thebans were particularly weak and didn't have all the resources that you could potentially have from having the north, that they may have sided closer with the Nubians. And this was an era where Nubia was more friend than foe at this time. No, I do not. I will admit I am not the biggest podcast listener. I used to be when I had to take public transportation for like an hour every day, or 2 hours every day to get to work. But now my commute is 20 minutes and I'm so happy. But no, I'm not familiar with that one. And a 4-hour episode is insane. I mean, it's understandable if you're only going to do one about Egypt, but a 4-hour episode is crazy. If you do listen to it and you have any questions or hear anything weird, let me know. I'm just very curious. I wish I had more time to like listen to other podcasts and watch like long YouTube videos. My unfortunate thing is that with my life being so busy lately and me being perpetually on TikTok, like posting stuff on TikTok, like my attention span for videos has been dwindled to so short. I can barely watch like a full episode of something or a longer YouTube video. I can't focus. It's been my downfall for the past like year or so. Oh my god, 1 a year? That's crazy. So the funny thing when it comes to these time periods that we don't have as much information about, we have this thing called attestations, which is essentially when you don't have as much information about a certain time period, you are severely limited on items that are closely associated with a particular pharaoh. And so, like, a lot of these pharaohs that we don't know a lot about, we only know they exist from 1 to 2 to 3, maybe a couple objects that have their name on it. And the way we know it's their name is because of the cartouche, for example. So like this ceremonial battle axe has this cartouche of Senkenenren Tau. But we have some pharaohs that we only have their name because of one object. And because it's in a cartouche, you know it's a pharaoh. Even if we have never heard about him before, even if he's never mentioned in any sort of text, he's never mentioned on any of the king's lists, if you find a piece that has a cartouche, that means that they are a king. And so these attestations are so hard because they're frustrating, because there are plenty of objects that might have been associated with this pharaoh, but they are not inscribed. They don't have the names of these pharaohs, and so you can't know. So there's a short list here of some of the things that he has his name on, and he has his name on much more things than any of the other pharaohs in this dynasty. But it's just something I thought I'd explain, because it is a little weird to think that there is only one there's only one piece of paper of your name somewhere out there in the world. Yes, Hector, I did go to Egypt. I definitely recommend it, especially if you like Egypt. I would say in some ways you are going to get Paris syndrome for sure. But in a lot of ways you won't. Paris syndrome for me definitely happened because of everything that was not ancient Egypt, that was modern Egypt. But also I didn't have an expectation for it. So it wasn't as bad as like the Paris syndrome kind of stuff, where I didn't have this amazing expectation for it, but it was more of a culture shock in my mind. But everything else was amazing. You can see there's a playlist of all of my vlogs. I didn't do like full vlogs, but I did compilation vlogs of I did a 12-day trip, and you can watch all the videos of all the stuff I saw. And I am planning to go back. I'm waiting for the Grand Egyptian Museum to open like fully, so that I don't have to like go in there when it's half open again. Sorry, I'm scrolling back up. Is this the same guy? He has a pot. His PhD in the cultural and literacy significance of ruins. Oh my goodness. He definitely knows what he's doing. It's a sign of royal power. Yes, Mark, you're coming. You're absolutely coming, Mark. We just gotta go. We just gotta do it. Figure it out. Yeah, Cairo was... I think the biggest thing was we were very grateful. I loved the place that we had, that we stayed, but we stayed in Giza, and from the airport, that is a full hour, like full hour. And so for it being the first hour of my entire 2-week trip was going on these Cairo highways. And I'm very petrified of driving and driving crazy. I was in an accident in college, and ever since then I've just always been kind of petrified, and that in combination with just like seeing what the city looked like on the lines of the highway, I was just like, what did I get myself into? But then seeing the pyramids and feeling very safe in our accommodation and stuff like that, like saved a lot of other stuff. But I just remember being like, oh my God, no, there's so many places in the world that I would just like, it would be absolutely crazy. And I have accepted it, but that was the biggest kind of like culture shock. I was like, within the first hour, I felt like craziness. Yeah, so there was a big culture shock there. I think I put on my seatbelt the first time. I realized later not to do it, but I literally was like, the other thing is I get horribly car sick. So that was the other terrifying thing, is I get absolutely horribly car sick. I don't think there are traffic laws in Egypt either. There are no lines on the highway. That was the craziest part. No lines anywhere. There were stop sign or traffic lights sometimes, but it was a little crazy. So the answer on like if somebody would randomly just like write their name in a cartouche, for the most part, it doesn't really matter because literacy in Egypt was horrible. So the vast majority of people couldn't read or write. So estimations at the height might have been about 5% of the population was literate. And that possibly might only just be reading. It might not even be writing. So I don't think that was really a problem that they had to worry about. And the other thing is that each pharaoh had 5 names. So it would have to make sense sort of for it to be in the cartouche. But yeah, the cartouche is just this symbol. It's actually a rope. What it is a rope with a tie. I think it's meant to be sort of this like encircling and strength and kind of, this is the name of them. So like this one in particular, this says son of Ra, and then has his name, and then it says, will he live for eternity? Ankh, debt. Debt is eternity. So, oh yes, Ra man. Oh yes. On lots and lots and lots of things. Both modern, like very, very modern, and also stuff from the 1600s, 1700s, 1800s, early 1900s. And I hate those that graffiti, but ancient graffiti like is better than anything. Like it's still cool, even though, because it tells you when certain people were visited for the first time. Yeah, older it is interesting. It is like the big temple in the Met has a ton of graffiti from when certain European visitors visited it for the first time, and they give their name and the year that they visited. And I know it's bad, but it is a very interesting way to look at it. Okay, there's an ad. We're gonna pause. I'm shutting up. TikTok, I can still talk to you though. It would be funny, Hector. Yeah, it's a hard line because it's like I understand it's defacing, but it also is kind of cool. Why does it say I have 13? Oh, this is not good. Not good, you guys. Okay, not that bad. Mm, 43 seconds. Nine, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2. Okay. So Answer is close, Kepler, but not 1799. We don't know the exact date, but there are sort of like two kind of bigger theories, but they most likely, the Sphinx's nose, it has chisel marks at the top of the nose and at the base of the nostril, was probably taken off at by the Egyptian people, the modern Egyptian people who were living there, probably in an act of, what is that called, iconoclasm, which is that there's a story that some like wealthy individual saw like farmers giving, like praying to the Sphinx, and which is just a head at this point, remember, under the sand, saw them like praying to it and leaving things, and so he like took the nose out as a way of defacing it, as it is not in the Islamic religion. They don't believe in icons. They don't believe in images showing their god. And so that both of the main theories are that it was the misinformation that spreads around is that Napoleon or Napoleon's men shot it off with a cannon. That is kind of a thing that has spread around a lot. But when you look at drawings of the Sphinx that date before Napoleon came to Egypt, the nose is still missing. But there is a distinct moment where the nose is not missing in some of the drawings that we have. I do actually have a TikTok all about this because people asked me so much about it. We don't have 100% evidence that the Sphinx's head was different earlier than later. No, Raw Man, unfortunately, it was most likely removed because, again, there are evidence of chisel marks that would have made it fully go down. Thank you so much, Bedmonst, for coming in, and thanks for the follow. What was the other thing I was saying? Yeah, we don't have any evidence that the Sphinx's head changed, like any concrete evidence. I think a lot of the reasons that we have the theory that potentially the Sphinx's head was something different before, was that whoa, my train of thought just flew out the window. No, Pumpkin the Cat, ask the questions, absolutely. Hi Dennis, welcome in. Pumpkin the Cat, this actually, you would probably really like this. One of the lectures that I have on my YouTube is all about misinformation and like taking down essentially the biggest misinformation campaigns about ancient Egypt, and I cover a lot of these things. The Sphinx and the pyramids were a huge section of that, but there are a lot of other really interesting things that we go over that are things that people popularly believed about Egypt that are not true, and that's also on my YouTube that you can watch. The reason that we think that some people think that the Sphinx's head may have been something else, and then it was there you go. The reason that some people think that the Sphinx originally had a different shaped head, like a lion or a jackal, you hear that about it. Sometimes the reason people think that is because they can't get over that the Sphinx's head proportions are so much smaller to the body. But there are other explanations that are equally as plausible, which is that there's a possibility that it was originally an image of Khufu. If we go with the assumption that Khufu built it and not Khafre, that it originally had the face of Khufu and then Khafre changed it, or that because the Sphinx is carved out of a natural piece of stone, there was an imperfection or like a hole somewhere that made it unable to make it in the correct proportions as they would like. And those are all possibilities. But we don't have anything like distinctly saying, oh, it was originally a lion, oh, it was originally a jackal, and then it was later changed to a human head. So Dennis, our discussion point that we are talking about today is the 17th Dynasty and the Theban pharaohs who fought against the Hyksos people. In particular, we're about to talk about Queen Ahhotep for a second, but I'm also just answering any and all questions about ancient Egypt. So we're on a slight tangent about the Sphinx, answering some questions about Sphinx and pyramid stuff, but we're always talking about everything all at once. I think we're gonna look at a mummy for a second. I think this is an image of mummified human remains. So if you don't want to see that, turn the screen around and just listen. But we're gonna look at the mummy of Senkenri Tao. And I did it again. You're not derailing. Especially as I'm choking. Claire's gonna be mad at me. Hi, Sir Siren. Welcome on in. Okay. I just want to eat my corn nuts. But I can't eat my corn nuts and talk at the same time. I gotta remember to chew these completely. Alright. So we're gonna look at human remains. I'm gonna tell you, I'm gonna send the precursor as well. These are going to be more gruesome than normal mummified remains. So, just so you know. And thank you, Dennis, for the heart meat. I just saw that. That is a good question, Raman. I believe that one is probably natural. Yes. But I have not looked into that. No, Mark, because the only corn nuts I get are the Trader Joe's corn nuts, and they only make salted. I find that if I ever get other corn nuts, or like the corn nut brand corn nuts, they're too small, and they're a little hard on my teeth. And like these ones are hard, but some of these are like really puffed. These would taste pretty good with some tahini on them, though. I kind of feel like Trader Joe's should make another flavored one. Because these are very good. Maybe we'll try some with tahini. Oh my god, should that be something we do for our anniversary? I make different flavored corn nuts. Wait, that would be actually kind of funny. Should I do that? You guys are gonna see. I'm gonna write it down here. I think we'll do that for the streamiversary part. I'm not doing ghost pepper. Absolutely not. Or maybe that'll be a challenge. Maybe that'll be I'll make different, because everyone has a craft. Each stream has a craft. Corn nut flavorings. Spicy for higher tiers. I can't spell. Higher tier. We'll see, like, if I get higher tier goals. Okay. Who said that? Dapper? You're so mean. Why would I do that? Oh my god. Oh yeah, don't judge my tabs. Dennis is judging my tabs. On my Twitch, the tabs are cut off so you can't see how many tabs I have open. It's all for this lecture. It's all for this. I just have them all up here. Which of them Egypts is your favorite of all of the Egypts? Egypt. That's my favorite. Oh god, Atlantic. I don't want to know. That's the fermented shark is absolutely batshit crazy. Ugh, I'd barf on stream. I'd barf on stream. I already know. Lower or upper? Upper. I prefer upper Egypt. Zapper, I'm actually gonna barf. Okay. Let's look at a mummy. So, Mark, did you remember that lower and upper are flipped? Oh, wait. Did I remember that? No, wait. Did I say upper? I said upper. Yes. No, I prefer Thebes and Amarna and Beni Hassan than the Delta. I don't know much about the Delta in comparison. I'm sure it's lovely up there, but I like Upper Egypt, which is southern Egypt. Just to confuse you. How you doing, Dapper? Excited to get your knighthood. Yeah, see, I'm not a pyramids girl. I'm a tomb girly. Give me the tombs of South. Beni Hassan. I'm not even joking. It's so funny that area is called Beni Hassan because it's spelled Beni, but it literally sounds like a guy's name. It sounds like an Egyptian guy's name. So, the mummy of Senkeneri Tau was discovered in 1881 alongside this Deir al-Bahri mummy cache. I think I'm going to do a whole video about the cache. I know I've done a video about the cache, but I think I might do a whole series about the cache and all the mummies found in it and such. Oh, Dapper. Oh, goodness. I'm excited. I'm so excited. So it was found with this huge cache. Essentially, it's all of these mummies were buried in the Valley of the Kings or in subsequent areas, and then were looted by people of that same time period. And then later in the 30th Dynasty, you actually have these priests who go through the Valley of the Kings, and they're suddenly like, holy shit, all these tombs have been looted. They are all open. They all have these mummies that have been stripped of all this stuff. We have to kind of respect our dead ancestors. And so they go through, they collect all of these mummies, and they put them in two separate caches. There's the Valley of the Kings cache, and there is the Deir al-Bahri cache. And all of these mummies get rewrapped in a lot of ways, labeled and re-put into coffins, and then put in one big tomb. Problem is, they didn't always put them in the right coffins, but we now know that a lot of them are kind of switched around, and some do not get labeled, and so we don't actually know who a lot of them are. I know, Dennis, it's sometimes hard with two chats where no one can read back and forth. 241, Dappa. Timu version of Ahhotep. Oh my god. He's so funny. So we have poor Mr. Senkeneri Tau. So this is our pharaoh that we were talking about, and I mentioned him a little bit when we talked about the Hyksos people, because Senkeneri Tau most likely died in battle against the Hyksos, and his mummy shows distinct evidence of this. And we have kind of these multiple different wounds on his face, with this kind of long wound here and the two sort of piercing wounds here. And what we actually have is most likely some sort of dagger wound, like stabbing dagger wounds over here, and that there is a possibility that this was made via a Hyksos axe, which is a distinctly shaped axe. It is not the same shape as an Egyptian axe, and it has been kind of measured and lines up with actually that Hyksos axe. The other big thing is that we don't necessarily know how he died. We assume in battle, but there are kind of three big options for how he could have died that people have sort of posited over the couple years. There is the possibility that he died like fully in battle, like he's on a chariot or he's in the infantry or something, and he fights with a guy and he falls down and he dies. There's another option that he is captured and that he is executed, essentially, in front of the military of the Hyksos, and then sent back to his people And now I am blanking on what the third option is. What was the third option? Oh, the third option, he was assassinated while he was asleep. That there was some sort of ambush and that he was like asleep or something, and the Hyksos people came in and assassinated him. That's the third option. But yeah, so this is we have like lots of options of like how yes, he also had a very quick mummification. So it says that the mummy was discovered in 1881 along with all of these pharaohs. Ahmose the First is his son, Amenhotep, Thutmose the First, Second, Third, Ramses the First, Seti, Ramses the Second, and Ramses the Ninth. He was unwrapped in 1886 by Gaston Maspero, who was at that time the Egyptian director of antiquities, and then this other guy, Eugene Gribalt, they unwrapped him together. And it was already sort of known that he probably died in battle. And so they kind of did approach this with the actual assumption. Yes, Dapper. We all know. So here's the thing. Senkeneri Tau I don't think really has a good preserved tomb that would have any sort of writing about this. Like, I think, I'm not 100% sure what information we have on, like, we know that he died in battle, but we do have these things called the Kamos stela, which are these big stela made by his son Kamos that talks about the battles and talks about all the stuff. And that might mention that his father died in battle, but it's kind of, I don't know distinctly if we have any actual records that say this guy died in battle. Wow, Dapper. two-ton car man. Yeah, so this is Maspero saying, kind of assuming some things about his death. It is not known whether he fell upon the field of battle or was a victim of some plot. The appearance of his mummy proves that he died a violent death when about 40 years of age. 2 or 3 men, whether assassins or soldiers, must have surrounded and dispatched him before help was available. A blow from an axe must have severed part of his left cheek, exposing the teeth, fractured the jaw, and sent him senseless to the ground. Another blow must have seriously injured the skull, and a dagger or javelin has cut open the forehead on the right side, a little above his eye. His body must have remained lying where it fell for some time. When found, decomposition had set in, and the embalming had to be hastily performed as best it might. So yes, he doesn't have the best mummification. It appears that it was hastily done, but there's a lot of kind of possibilities. Like, I think the possibility that he died in battle of the Hyksos, very close to where the Hyksos were, and literally traveling back to Thebes was literally, like, he wasn't mummified until he got back to Thebes and such. You can't say that no, Dennis, I can't really. What are you doing? What is going on? Everyone's giving Egypt puns. Why is the stupid OBS? We're getting a raid! Hi, Ludo!
Lord of the crown, King of the south and north, Son of Bread.
How are you, Ludo? Welcome on in. Thank you, Mark. Oh, look! It's actually working! Welcome on in. We are doing a little discussion. Yes, Dennis, we're getting a raid, which means somebody from Twitch is coming over and bringing they're finishing up their stream, and so they're bringing all of their viewers over here. And so it's our good friend Ludo History, who also talks about history. Is this you? Yeah, this is you playing Shadows. We have so much more to go with Shadows. I think we're getting close, but it feels like we still have so much more for Shadows. But welcome on in, everybody. My name is MelissainDeNile. I am in denial in more ways than one. I am an Egyptologist, archaeologist, and I stream Egyptology and archaeology games, as well as do lectures and discussions here on my Twitch. We're also live on TikTok. Can't remember that. Was that a different game? It looked like Shadows to me, so I was just assuming. But welcome on in, everybody. Today we are talking about the 17th Dynasty, which is a small period within ancient Egyptian history while one group is ruling in the north, that is a non-Egyptian group, a civilization, and then the Egyptian Thebans are ruling in the south, and then eventually battle it out, and then the Egyptians win. And so we're talking about the Theban pharaohs today. We're currently talking about Senkeneri Tau, and his poor old little mummy that's a little bit banged up. Thank you for the Go Popular, Dennis. Yeah, I don't know. I think it's supposed to just click a random clip. So if you've clipped it, it's going to be that. It's going to be something old. Oh, you're set for life now, Dapper. Oh, that's the only laugh I can do when you give these really bad puns. But welcome on in. So you were playing this Neo. Is this another, like, Assassin's Creed Shadows? Is this in Japan too? Like, I feel like there's so many games that seem so similar, because I know Shadows is similar to. Not similar, but like Ghost of Tsushima and stuff, and I was like, that game looks really similar to Shadows. I know you regret nothing, Dapper. You take joy in this. You take joy in the puns. So yeah, I will say, like, this thing that Maspero says about the mummy is a little bit outdated. Like, it's not really the best way. Like, Mark, our bioarchaeologist, would definitely not use some of this language when describing, like, the preservation of the body and the possibilities of what happened, but these are all kind of possibilities because we don't know anything specific. Thank you, Dennis. Have a very great rest of your night. Thank you for all the little gifties. Was that Shadows? I can't see anything. Okay. What is Neo 2 about, Ludo, or one of your lovely friends? If you need to raid and dash, that is totally fine. Get your rest. Get your drinks. Yeah, so the wound on the forehead was probably caused by a Hyksos, and the neck was probably caused by a dagger. And the theory is that it was a dagger while he was prone. So that, again, there seems to be something about him possibly lying down, whether that is he gets hit with the axe, he falls down, and somebody just takes the dagger, or they take the dagger first and then hit him with the axe, just to be careful. Like, it's kind of hard to determine the order of some stuff. And the other thing is there are no wounds on his hands. Like, we're looking at this like almost like a forensic anthropologist would look at, like as like a murder victim. Like, there are no wounds on his hands, and so it appears that, like, he possibly could not defend himself in any way. And so, like, the main hypothesis is that he either died in battle or he was killed while he was sleeping. And then the reconstruction of this is that this guy, Gary J. Shaw, thank you so much, Secret Satan 77 for the follow. Welcome on in. The court sort of newer theory that has been brought in, again, these three that I was talking about, is that he may have been executed. He may have been captured and executed. And so I believe, if I remember correctly, this guy, when he was doing examinations, there was a possibility that his hands were tied behind his back, that there was evidence of, like, twisting and on the wrists, and so that his hands could have been tied behind his back, and he was executed in that way. Here we have his mummy seems to be hastily embalmed. X-rays that were taken of the mummy show no attempt to remove the brain or add linen. Mummy is the worst preserved of all the royal mummies held at the Egyptian Museum. And then you have somebody in 1973 saying that he looks more Nubian based on his skull, which is stupid. So again, it seems he dies in his 40s, and there are these deformed hands. Like, if I look up a different picture of him, you guys will, it's even honestly worse. He honestly looks really bad now. Here he goes. There's the little baby. I don't know why his head's all wrapped up like that, but his poor little hands are very deformed. But you can see some of the different injuries on his face. Did you? Yeah, you got the serious wounds in his face. Tulund Man, I think I have seen him. So now he is in the National Museum of Egyptian Civilization, along with all of the other kings and queens. Honestly, Dapper, it's so funny. I could look at mummies all day, but one of the only time that I really had my stomach turned was looking at a bog body in the Archaeology Museum in Dublin. There are two bog bodies there, and there's something about the tint of the skin and like the rainbow sheen, like the oily sheen they have. And there was the thing I had, the one that I saw in particular, it had no head. It was just this much, but it had the arms, and it was the fingernails. It was something about the guy's hands and fingernails that really freaked me out. I really didn't like it. It was so interesting because I have a particularly strong stomach with a lot of those things, but the bog bodies, and honestly only seeing them in person, I think seeing them online is not the same. And that's weird. Again, Mark, I'm like, I was so close to doing like bioarchaeology and forensic anthropology, so like I'm very surprised that like that turned my stomach. It was an interesting thing for me. Okay, so let's go to the person I really want to talk about today, which is Queen Ahhotep I. So this is Senkeneri Tao's wife, Ahhotep, and we are going to talk about the Ahhotep problem because there is something called the Ahhotep problem, and we'll talk about that in a second. But she is a very interesting character, and we don't know a lot about her, but in comparison to a lot of the other pharaohs and people in this family, we sort of know a little bit more about her than a lot of other people. And we have more artifacts associated with her than other people. Thank you, Pumpkin the Cat. Hope to see you next time. Roxy, I think you'll like this problem. It's a little annoying, but it is a very interesting problem to have. It's kind of weird. Like, I think it's not a common problem, and so I think that's why it like is very confusing. Egyptians did not have elephants because elephants were not native to the area of Egypt, but they did know about elephants, and they were in the south of Egypt. They did know about elephants, and sometimes there's a possibility that elephants were brought up to Egypt as part of like a pharaoh's menagerie of things that would get traded, but not really that often. You don't really see them in depictions very much, but you do have a word for them. You do have a hieroglyph for them. I don't think that we do have I don't think we have an elephant mummy. I don't think we do. I knew you were just doing this to set me up, Dapper, but I'm gonna fucking educate you. I actually did make a TikTok video about elephants. We do have a lion. We have lion mummies, which are things that are also not native to to ancient Egypt. We do have lion mummies. We have a couple of those, but again, would have been brought to Egypt as like gifts and stuff from the south. So, Ahhotep, She has quite a lot of titles, and quite a lot of interesting titles that connects her to other people. So her titles include King's Daughter, King's Sister, Great Royal Wife, she who is joined to the White Crown, and King's Mother. So she is the daughter of Queen Teddy Sherry and Amos the Elder. So she and her husband are probably siblings, maybe half siblings, but most likely full siblings. But it's kind of funny because we don't 100% know if Senkeneri Tao is the son of this Amos the First, but we absolutely know that Ahhotep has to have been his daughter because she has these titles of King's Daughter. The weird thing is that a pharaoh would not normally get a title like King's Son. King's Son is not a title. That is, I don't think, anywhere. But King's Daughter is, and it is an important title because it helps us identify these women with people from before, because otherwise they usually would never be identified with their parents. Not very normally. Not normally. And so she, in comparison to her husband, had a very, very long life. She possibly governed as regent for her young son, Amos the First. Remember, we said he probably became king when he was about 10 years old, and may have actually carried a lot of influence as well. Not just been sort of the regent that is not doing much, but is actually doing quite a lot. And we have a Stela and Karnak that praises her abilities as a leader, and the cult of Amenhotep I continued to remember her after her death up until at least the 21st dynasty. And we're talking, this is the 17th dynasty. That's insane. The 21st dynasty, a queen is being recognized. Like, that's a big deal. That's a big deal, guys. Now, the Ahhotep problem is that there are two separate coffins in Egypt that are labeled Ahhotep that have very similar titles. And it confuses us. Are there two Ahhoteps, or are there two burial places for one Ahhotep? And so that is the Ahhotep problem, is that we possibly have two women named Ahhotep, that maybe all of this information is getting conflated together. No, Rahman, just royal family. Absolutely. Just royal family. This was not a common thing that all Egyptians were doing, and not all pharaohs did it. It's just a couple of them did. Thank you, Sheshu Energy. Have a great rest of your night. Like mummies moved to different tombs. On occasion, if potentially the tomb got looted and then they had to find a new tomb, yeah, they would get moved. It's more than likely that it would be because you got looted. And if the tomb was compromised, they would have to find you a new tomb and reseal it. We know that there's a Queen Hetepheres, who was Khafre's wife, builder of the second pyramid. There's a Khafre's mother, Khufu's wife, I think. There's a possibility her tomb got looted, and there's a possibility that her full mummy got stolen. And because we have a ton of her stuff that got reburied for some reason in a separate tomb, but there was a huge coffin in there and there was no mummy when it was found. And there's a possibility that the priests may have sort of lied to Khafre and said, yeah, your mom's tomb got looted, but she's okay, so we're just gonna replace her and move her somewhere else, but never told Khafre that her mummy was gone. It's a crazy theory, but it is a weird theory and possibility. Nefertari's tomb is probably one of the best tombs in Egypt. It's definitely different from a lot of the tombs of the Valley of the Kings. It's by far the best tomb in the Valley of the Queens, but it is also very, very well preserved and has been well reconstructed by the Getty Conservation Institute. So it's been really, really well restored. King Tut's tomb is important, but it's not that cool. It's actually very small. If you ever go to Egypt, you will literally, the amount of times that I heard people go into King Tut's tomb being like, and walking back out being like, what the hell was that? It's literally like, it's 2 small rooms plus 2 very small mini rooms. And King Tut himself is not important in the grand scheme of things. He is one of the least important pharaohs in the entire history of Egypt. The reason he is so famous in our modern day world is because his tomb was almost entirely untouched and was not, the pieces that were found in the tomb were not separated and were kept in one collection together. But as a pharaoh, he did diddly squat. He did very little. There are definitely pharaohs who did less than him, but he didn't do much. Underneath my fingernail that has been bothering me. No, Raman. Literally 0 humans are related to King Tut because King Tut had no children. No, he didn't live long to do much. Yes, he could have been a great king, but he didn't live long enough to do anything. And I would say if you're thinking of a Egyptian pharaoh that you could possibly say a lot of humans are related to, I would pick Ramses the Great. Ramses the Great had hundreds of children. And Genghis Khan is also another option. Dapper, go ahead. Go ahead, genealogist. I will answer Max's question. Yes, they had really great pictures and preservation of when it was excavated. The photos are amazing. They're mostly Henry Brunton. Henry Brunton took some beautiful, amazing photos. They're all in the Griffith archive and you can access them online. There are some amazing photos, and the rooms were crammed with stuff, over 5,000 objects, but in comparison, the rooms are so small. The Valley of the Kings tombs are enormous. Like, just to get down to the bottom, it sometimes takes you 10 minutes. 10 to 15 minutes, but Tut's, you're down there in less than 1. Dapper's probably typing out a whole monologue right now. But yeah, King Tut is not related to anyone because he had no biological children that survived. He only had 2 children that were stillborn or miscarriages and died. No kids equals no descendants. Oh, what is a bad one? It's burnt a little bit. Alright, where are we next? Yep. Absolutely. Max, read what Dapper says. Dapper is a professional genealogist. And you're kind of right. I want to read this out loud because if I can't. Statistically, thanks to something called pedigree collapse, there's a mathematical certainty that if you are of your descent, you are descended from Charlemagne. But because of the distance genetically, the science is that at that amount of time, you are the ancestor of everyone or nobody. So if you have a proven line of descent, the chances everyone else also has, but maybe not proven. In terms of ancient Egypt, the global progenitor, the ancestor I've heard is Cheops. Oh, so Khufu. Interesting. I have always said, like, and there's no like actual proof of this, but I have always said that, like, if you want to say that you are related to an ancient Egyptian king, even if you like don't have an actual line, Ramses the Great is the option because he had hundreds and hundreds of kids and hundreds of documented kids. Like Khufu, I think we know he had like a couple and stuff. But yeah, it is like, it's so funny because I have seen, so I worked as a genealogist for 2 years and it was mostly about American genealogy and stuff. But the funny thing is I have seen the King Tut thing thrown out there and I'm always like, I'm sorry, what? He had no kids. That's stupid. why not Ramses? And I always say Ramses just because he has a better option. And there is a book that I found, which is a book on the Ramsey family. So Ramesey, Ramsey family. And in the front page of the book, they say that they believe that they descend from Ramses the Great. And I was like, okay, it's stupid. It's stupid, but it's reasonable. Yeah, no, absolutely don't take it as a negative. This is a very, again, these are these misinformation campaigns that just spread throughout the internet. And there are things that are, the things that I find that are so silly about it is that more often than not, these are misinformation campaigns that are believable. Like, it is believable because we know Ramses the Great had so many kids. We know Genghis Khan had so many kids. I know about Charlemagne. I know about Eleanor of Aquitaine. Eleanor of Aquitaine. Everyone's related to Eleanor of Aquitaine. And so it's like, you take a nugget of something that is believable and people will believe it from just one statement rather than actually going deeper and doing deeper research and stuff to figure out if that's actually true. Yeah, and it's definitely like, it's this extra thing that is just like so hard for thousands and thousands of years. Like Charlemagne and Eleanor of Aquitaine at least make a little bit more sense. Like Genghis Khan is, in comparison to Egypt, is relatively closer in time, but like Charlemagne and Eleanor of Aquitaine are closer and stuff. It's a possibility, Ramen. Again, it's these things that you can say very easily in passing that no one's gonna question you on. The Tut thing is stupid because I know that, and I think, I'm gonna be very honest, I would maybe assume that some people know that he never had any kids, but maybe I just assume, maybe I just know. Yeah, it's that, no, I can't be right, but I could see it being right. It's that wishy-washy area where you're just going to assume it's right, but you're not going to go further to check if it's right. Mark, let me do it. I've been missing my genealogy bug. I've been missing like going into Ancestry a lot. So I need somebody's ancestry to look up and do some deep sleuthing. Everyone's related to Celine Dion. If that's actually true, that's really funny, but I don't have time, but I can give you the resources of things that might help. I will give tips. That's what I'll say. I've always thought about, if I had more time, I would love to be an independent genealogy researcher, like a freelance, somebody where somebody hires me to do all the research. I would love it. I would like absorb it. It would be so amazing. But I have no time. I think it would be the best side gig I could possibly get because like truly I don't have enough. Like I need more money, and I know that people would pay me money. I know DAR ladies would pay me good ass money to do the research for them so that they can submit and prove that they're related to some old guy from the revolution. But okay, back to where we're at. So so we have I think we've talked about this, Mark, way back when I vaguely described what my old job was, and then you were like, I think I know. And so, I could do it. And honestly, I use some of their charts as ways to like, all of my tips and tricks are from that. Hungary. Let's go. Okay, so this is a coffin that was intended for Queen Ahhotep I and is found at the cache in Deir al-Bahri along with Senkenri Tau. It has the inscriptions King's daughter, King's sister, Great Royal Wife, she who joined the right crown, King's mother, but the body was not found in the coffin. And The other thing is that because King's mother is not listed, she's the mother of 2 kings. Because King's mother is not listed, this leads researchers to believe that this coffin might be for a Queen Ahhotep of the... Wait, sorry. Although the queen's body was not found in this coffin, evidence including the title of King's mother has... Okay, so sorry. This does have King's mother on it, and yes, King's mother. So this is believed to be the mother of Ahmose and Kamose. But there are other options. So, there's a possibility Kamose is actually not her son. Kamose might be a brother-in-law, like a brother of Senkenri-Tau, or her son. So Kamose is a little bit weird. But she also had other children as Princess Ahmose Nebeta, Princess Ahmose Tum Esrisi, and the later queen Ahmose Nefertari, who marries Ahmose II, or Ahmose I, who's her brother. And then there are a couple other people, Ahmose Sapir, Prince Binpu, and Princess Ahmose Henut Ipet might also be children of her, but it's a little vague. So here is the stela at Karnak, which contains all this kind of praise to Ahhotep. And it says, give jubilation to the mistress of the land, the ruler of the riverbanks of Hauneb, with a renowned name in every land, and who does the will of the masses. The king's wife, the sovereign sister, life, prosperity, and health, the king's daughter, and the august king's mother, who knows matters and upholds Egypt. She has united its officer class, she has protected it, she has returned its deserters, she gathers its dissidents, and she has pacified Upper Egypt, and she quells its rebels, the king's wife Ahhotep living. So this is a stela that is made while she is still living. So the possibility that she either commissioned this or her son Ahmose I commissioned this while she was still alive is like awesome. Is like very, very, very rare. Very rare for a woman to get such praise. Yes, could she have written it herself or commissioned it? Yes, that's another possibility. But, so based there is a chance that she could have actually commanded the Egyptian armies, maybe when her son was really, really young, or when he was abroad, when he was an adult, because after he defeated the Hyksos, he goes up into the Levant as well. So somebody else says it doesn't actually imply that she actually is directing the leadership, but it makes clear that she is an effective ruler who helps unite the people. So she appears to have lived straight through both her son's death, Kamose's death, and Ahmose's rule, and lives into the New Kingdom. Hi, Spook. How are you? Welcome on in. We're talking about the 17th Dynasty, specifically this queen, Ahhotep I, right now. So it appears that officials explicitly linked to Ahhotep I generally held civil administrative positions, such as overseer of the double house of gold, overseer of the double granary, and the royal wife, king's mother Ahhotep, or senior steward of the king's mother. In contrast, officials explicitly linked to Ahmose I were generally involved with border administration or the cult of the god Amun. This person suggests that this could indicate an ongoing division of ruling responsibilities between Ahhotep I and her son. Maybe she is managing the administration of the palace and the capital of Thebes, along with other internal affairs, while her son is focusing attention on the broader administration, solidifying of the royal power abroad, with the military, things like that. And so it appears that they may have been sort of still co-ruling, even though he is much older now and not just a little baby. She probably is also actually suspected to outlive her son, Ahmose. She is mentioned in the Keres stela, which dates to year 10 of the reign of her grandson, Amenhotep I. And her steward, Euf, also mentions her on his stela. Euf refers to Ahhotep as the mother of Ahmose I and would later be the steward of Queen Ahmose, wife of Thutmose I. This suggests that Ahhotep I may have died at a fairly advanced age during the reign of Thutmose I. So Thutmose I. So Amenhotep I's son. That she may have lived, right? Am I right about that? Thutmose I. His dad is... Yeah, his dad, Amenhotep I. So that she could have possibly lived through how many? Senkeneri... Well, okay. Her father, Ahmose the Elder, Senkeneri Tau, Kamose, Ahmose I, Amenhotep I, and Thutmose I. 6 pharaohs she lived through, which is a long time. We unfortunately don't have her mummy. Her mummy is MIA. Probably will never be found at this rate. But, like, I mean, that's a shit ton of years. It's a lot of years that she lived through. And then again, we also know that there is still the cult of Amenhotep I specifically, so her grandson continues to remember her all the way up to the 21st dynasty. So she lived into the 18th dynasty, but in the 21st dynasty, it appears that she is still remembered. And she is sometimes found in multiple New Kingdom tombs where the tomb owner includes her in their list of respected ancestors. That's very interesting. I've never heard of that before. Huh. All right, so here we got the Ahhotep debate, the Ahhotep problem. So, in 1859, a team of Egyptian workers employed by the French Egyptologist Auguste Mariette discovered a coffin at the dig site of Dra Abu al-Naga. If you remember, Dra Abu al-Naga is not generally a royal tomb area, but is mainly for all the royal tombs in the royal tombs of the 17th Dynasty. They all seem to be buried in Dra Abu al-Naga. So in this area, they find a coffin, and it was identified as belonging to a queen named Ahhotep and inscribed with the titles Great Royal Wife and She Who is Joined to the White Crown, which, if you remember, are similar to the other coffin. This coffin did contain a mummy when it was first discovered. Unfortunately, as it's 1859 and the Egyptologists then sucked, the body and the bandaging were destroyed soon after. So it's hard to determine. Destroyed is probably the wrong word, but were not preserved. And then in 1881, you have the royal cache being found in Deir al-Bahri, and this one, there is a coffin that doesn't have a mummy, but also has the name for Ahhotep. This coffin is massive, has this long, way longer list of titles, which has king's daughter, king's sister, king's mother, but didn't have the body. And we know that in this cache, they had buried somebody else. They buried a later pharaoh, Penegem I, in this coffin. And so we now don't know which Ahhotep that we're talking about. We're going to get an ad soon, but I'm going to keep going. So they assumed that these were actually, the titles were belonging to the same person, and that maybe that the coffins were made to be together and they were separated, but the dimensions of the coffin don't fit that scenario. And the coffin in Dra Abu al-Naga is found with items inscribed with the names of Kamose and Ahmose. And so the Dra Abu al-Naga Ahhotep could be the mother of Ahmose and the wife of Kamose, or the wife of Pharaoh Seqenenre Tau. But then you have the king's mother title, which only appears on the Deir al-Bahri coffin. And so the unexplained absence of this title at this burial in Dra Naga, that means there are probably 2 separate queens of Ahhotep. Thanks so much, Secret Satan. Stupid raid message. I gotta fix that. All right, I'm gonna snooze this ad. Okay, so I can finish this last section. The raid came in earlier. It's just because Secret Satan used the word raid and it triggered it. I gotta fix that stupid raid thing. There's so many things I gotta fix. So because even though these items with these later pharaohs are found with this coffin, the coffin doesn't have the inscription of King's mother, and so would not be able to be associated with those actual pharaohs. And it gets just like super confusing. And so essentially it has now been proposed the king's mother at Deir el-Bahri has become more widely linked to the actual Queen Ahhotep I, mother of Pharaoh Ahmose, while the great royal wife, who is at Dra Naga and seemingly did not have a son who became a pharaoh, or a brother or a father who ascended the throne, has been proposed as a second Queen Ahhotep who is unknown, who we don't know where she fits in the grand scheme of things. Ahhotep II, which I'll show you that coffin in a sec, is now generally regarded as the queen identified from the gilded coffin at Dra Naga, and is possibly the wife of Kamose. There might be like 2 separate ones. And then there was also a possibility that there was an Ahhotep III, but as you see, researchers in the 20th and 21st centuries have continued to explore the theory of a single Ahhotep, although people still think that there's the possibility of 1 or 3 Ahhoteps. So this is the big coffin. I'm going to see if I can find a better picture of this coffin. This is the coffin of the one found in Dra Naga, which to me, if you look at this coffin and you go back, these coffins are very similar. They have the same type of eyes. They have the same type of decoration. So it's very confusing about who this one could be. But, and we're going to look at some of the stuff found in this tomb too. But I actually want to find a picture of, because her coffin is crazy big. Coffin. I want this one. There's like a really great picture. Oh yeah, here it is. This coffin is freaking massive. There's not any good pictures of it though. This coffin is literally huge. It's actually massive. It's one of the biggest coffins like I've ever seen. Tallest coffins. And then this is the full coffin of this one. And they don't line up and they would not fit together. They have very different styles. Alright, anything else about this thing I need to talk about? No, let's talk about this next. I'm gonna dismiss the ad in one more second, because we gotta wrap up soon. There's a couple other things I kind of want to talk about. I don't know if we'll get to it. Well, we probably won't get to it now, but I don't know if we'll do another stream to talk about it. We might. I mainly wanted to talk about Ahhotep, so I am satisfied. So we have this second coffin, and the stuff that was found in this coffin, there is some really, 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 really cool artifacts, which is what I wanted to show you guys mainly. So we have this absolutely, absolutely beautiful collar, and all of the super, super small, detailed pieces, and small golden beads. are just like fantastic. These are like little animals running after each other, like genuinely like so beautiful. We have the royal ceremonial axe, which is stunning. So this ceremonial axe is found in this tomb, and it has the name of Ahmose the First, the defeater of the Hyksos, on it. And it's definitely ceremonial because it's fully gold, but it has his name on it here, and it is just like this beautiful preserved like gold axe. And it has is there the back side of it? No. On the back side it has images of a king smiting an Asiatic enemy. So it literally like has imagery of him essentially killing a Hyksos on the back side of it. I think yeah, here it is. We talked about this when we did imagery about the Hyksos. So here's the name of Ahmose the First, and here is this imagery of this king defeating an enemy. It's a very vague enemy, but it's presumably an Asiatic enemy. And then the other side of it. One of the other things, sorry, I'm running out of tabs. There were two boats. One is gold, one is silver. There are these tiny little boats with wheels and just tiny little people. Like, it's so intricate and so beautiful and just like literally so elaborate that it's kind of crazy. This beautiful bracelet of Ahhotep II that names again Ahmose the First. It has blue lapis lazuli stone, carved hieroglyphs, like literally amazing. These are all of the items that she found. So here's the bracelet. So it's reflective on either side. And it unhinges like this. Isn't that amazing? It's just so detailed. Lapis lazuli blue is the most beautiful blue. Where's my piece of lapis? It's up here. I love lapis. Mine has a big chunk of the gray, but it also has a pretty good chunk of the gold that goes through it. This thing was so expensive. You don't even want to know. Teal. You like teal better? Teal's very pretty. I do like teal. And the turquoise, like Egyptians had turquoise. There's just something about like, and I will say blue is not even one of my favorite colors, but when it comes to like Egyptian colors, like like the dark blue is so beautiful. So yeah, so he has this bracelet. I'm trying to find like the best pictures that I can. A little set of golden armbands and this tiny little box. Again, has Ahmose the First name on it. Like all of these things have like Ahmose the First name. Here's that silver boat. Silver was more precious than gold in ancient Egypt. Like this is almost more remarkable than the gold one, to have something made out of silver. This is I love this picture. This is like a picture of when it was first discovered. So there's here's the ceremonial axe, but there's another axe as well. These giant gold bracelets and earrings and daggers. I'll show you more pictures of the daggers. Here's that bracelet with the two little sphinxes and the little box. Here's the other bracelet, and then the flies of valor. So the flies of valor we're going to talk about because that is like one of the most important, amazing things. Okay, let's go back to So this is Egypt Museum. This is an interesting website. It was not as rare. Silver was more rare to find. So gold is everywhere. I mean, it's not everywhere. It was still expensive to go and get it and stuff, but silver was harder to find, so it became more expensive. So you have the Usek collar, the Westek collar. This is this armlet with all of these incised pieces of lapis and carnelian and turquoise, which is just like beautiful. I had to study this piece and a similar piece in my graduate school because it is like so detailed and so beautiful. This is what we call a pectoral. It's a really big necklace, pretty much. Would have sat sort of lower, kind of on the chest. But you have two gods pouring like libation, like sacred water over top of who is presumably, although he doesn't have a crown in this image, is probably Ahmose the First. It's probably like possibly even a coronation ceremony image, and has his cartouches on either side. There's two different goddesses on either side, and so this was found, and it's like, I mean, it's just like genuinely the most beautiful thing ever. So the funniest part about this is that all of these objects were found in this tomb in Dra Abul al-Naga, but none of them almost have her name on it. A lot of it just has Ahmose the First, the son, the guy who defeats the Hyksos and such. So this is one of the most important things ever. And these flies, these are big. These things are honking. They're huge. They're like this big. A fly of valor is literally called a fly of valor because it is pretty much like I don't even know what military awards there are in the modern world besides like a Purple Heart, which I know is getting injured. This is like the Silver Star. This is like the award to get in battle. This is what you would get if you were victorious and you did something very, very, very important. And you would get one. You would get one of these. And she has 3. These are military decorations. They are bestowed upon military leaders for their courage in the battlefield. There's a theory that there are flies because flies are very fast and they are very quick thinking, and it's like that's what we think the ancient Egyptians thought and why they thought flies would be a good representation of being valorant in battle and such. And yeah, it's just like the most beautiful necklace ever. And it is very indicative that it's not 100% sure if she received these or if her son received these. Yeah, flies are hard to kill. Exactly. They're very fast. Yes, this is all part of why we think flies are this kind of representation. It's unclear if these are hers or if these are her son's, because a lot of these items have like the son's name on it. Could be her husband's. Yes, there are plenty of people that could have been gifted these, and you're right, maybe they were one for each of them. It's unclear, but these were in her tomb, so they are closely associated her no matter what. But it could have been maybe for her husband, her son, and her 2 sons, or herself as well. This beaded bracelet is amazing because it actually is preserved and the beads are as they were rather than being reconstructed. But it has, again, beautiful son of Ra and the name. It's just like absolutely incredible. Oh yeah, I love to believe that they're all for her. I'm just being clear that we don't know. I would love it if they were inscribed on the back and they said who they were given to, but they're not. They're blank. I think that is all of the items from her tomb. We're about to get an ad in a second, but I believe that's the the majority of the items. I gotta close some of these tabs. Oh, here's also a dagger as well. I don't know if this is found in her tomb. But this is one of those daggers. I think it is. And it has the name of King Ahmose on it as well. Yeah, the ceremonial axe. So yeah. All right. All of her stuff. Oh, interesting. There's a theory by Anne Massey Roth that Senkenri Tao had 3 consorts, Ahhotep I, who was the mother of Ahmose, of a separate Ahmose, who is not the future pharaoh, and several princesses also named Ahmose. Then there was this woman. Oh, I know her. Who was the mother of Prince Ahmose, and then another Teddy Sherry. Interesting. That's a different theory. I haven't heard that theory before. All right, we're about to get an ad, so give me a couple seconds, and we'll only stream for another 20 minutes or so. But I'll see what else. I was trying to see what other things I had here. Oh, this is something. Okay. I might read that later. I'm gonna download that. All right. Corn nuts are falling out of my bag. That's a good question. Mm, 16 seconds. What would be my name as queen? Oh, very good, fun question. So the ad is just gonna end in a couple seconds, but give me 2 seconds. So Hector over on TikTok asked a very good question. What would my name be if I was an ancient Egyptian queen? And I've talked about this before, but the way that there's not 100% clarity if ancient Egyptians would change their name throughout their lifetime, because there are some that are weirdly specific to their job. Like there's a guy named Ahhotep who's the high priest of Ptah, and you're like, was that always your name? Like, was it always planned that you were going to become a priest of Ptah, or did you change your name when you became that? Like, so it's sometimes unclear. For pharaohs, you get 5 names. So you get your use your birth name, but then you're also given different names, and there's a possibility that they could have had some sort of choice into that. But queens only had 1 name, and in the way that I do commissions and I translate people's names into hieroglyphs, and the way that I do that is I find out what the name of the meaning of your name is, and I try to find an equivalent in ancient Egyptian. And so my name in Greek means bee or honeybee, and so then my name would be Bit in Egyptian. So I would have literally been Queen Bit if I did that. I can't remember the name for queen. What's the name for queen? I don't remember. But yeah, so my name would have been Bit. Maybe Bitsy. But yeah, Bit. So just for fun. So very briefly, let's look over Kamos. Yeah, I'm Queen Bee. I am Beyonce. I literally didn't think about that until this very moment. I am Beyonce, guys. You better respect me. No, not Cardi B. I guess I'll be Beyonce. If I have to be either one of those, I'll be Beyonce. So Kamos is this pharaoh who did not live very long and presumably may have also died in battle against the Hyksos. We have his coffin here. It's a very interesting coffin in comparison to a lot of other ones. The chin beer is very interesting and such. And probably reigned about 5 years or so. I'm trying to think anything. So we do luckily actually have a lot of records from this guy, even though he didn't live very long. We have something called the Carnarvon tablet that gives us like the misgivings of this king's council. See, all are loyal as far as Kusei. We are tranquil in our part of Egypt. Elephantine is strong. The middle part is with us as far as Kusei. Men till for us. The finest of these lands are cattle pasture, and the papyrus marches. Corn is sent for our swine. Our cattle are not taken away. He holds the land of the Asiatics. We hold Egypt. If I could go back to ancient Egypt but couldn't return, no. I would only do it with the expectation that I forgot what my real life was like and that I could speak ancient Egyptian and that I would have blended in. I would only do it if I had like a shit ton of stipulations, because I would become so depressed and I would become so scared that I would out myself as a person from the future and ruin the space-time continuum. And like, there's so many things that I would be terrified that I would ruin. With only one massive hand? I don't know if I'd do that either. How massive are we talking? Because I would absolutely, if I could. The best way that I've been thinking about this as like a weird post-apocalyptic, or not post-apocalyptic, like super futuristic show or book where like, yes, if I could be a spectator. So I was thinking about literally some sort of story where people are allowed to time travel and they are in these like big bubbles, like they're in these big bubble cars and you kind of are able to observe, but there's all of these restrictions that you're like not allowed to get out and you're not allowed to do all this stuff. And then like essentially somebody does it and chaos ensues over time and space and they're on the run. And like, I think it would be a really cool like movie or TV show. 3 times at least? No, that's too big. That's too big. So this presentation may have been propaganda designed to embellish his reputation since his dad died against the Hyksos. The king responds to his council, I should like to know what serves the strength of mine when a chieftain in Avaris and another in Kush. I sit united with an Asiatic and a Nubian, each in possession of his slice of Egypt, and I cannot pass by him as far as Memphis. No man can settle down when despoiled by the taxes of the Asiatics. I will grapple with him that I may rip open his belly. My wish is to save Egypt and to smite the Asiatic. The Time Machine book. I've never heard of that book. What book is that? Is it called the Time Machine book? So we know from, here's this big stela. We know about his like distinct campaign to go up. We also know that Kamos talks about a letter that when he's trying to go up to take it down the Hyksos, he gets a letter from somebody back in Thebes saying, oh no, the Nubians are going to come and attack us. And so he gets distracted and has to come back down because he is literally in between these two pretty great forces at this time, and he's very pressured and such. And so we only know him from year 3 at the least. We think he went a little bit longer, but it's really hard to know kind of besides then. And now this is even crazier, is the mummy of Kamos is mentioned in a papyrus called the Abbot Papyrus, which is talking about like records of tomb robberies during the reign of Ramses IX about 400 years later, and they mention this guy's mummy. And it says, while his tomb was mentioned as being in a good state, it is clear that his mummy was moved at some point afterward, as it was then discovered in 1857 in Dra Abu al-Naga, and seemingly deliberately hidden in this like pile of debris in this tomb. And it's a painted and stuccoed coffin, and was found along with it, and it had a gold and silver dagger. Ooh, that is a beautiful dagger. Oh my god, it's at the Royal Library of Brussels? What the heck? That's weird. A bronze mirror, a scarab, and a pectoral in the shape of a cartouche bearing the name of his successor and his brother, Ahmose. So the coffin remains in Egypt, while the dagger is in Brussels, and the pectoral and mirror are in the Louvre. The name of the pharaoh inscribed on the coffin was only recognized 50 years after the original discovery, by which time the mummy, which was left in the fucking pile of debris, was almost certainly long lost. So they didn't save the mummy, unfortunately, which sucks. All right, quickly, we're not gonna go over Ahmose because Ahmose has like a whole big life after this, but he kind of becomes the guy and becomes the head of the entire 18th dynasty. And you can see again this beautiful, beautiful dagger and the beautiful little cartouche at the end. Thank you, Gwen, for the follow. Welcome on in. Here's that image again of him grabbing this Asiatic, or probably a Hyksos, on this axe that was found in his mother's tomb, supposed mother's tomb, and all of the items. See, he's got lots of images of stuff. Ooh, beautiful. What a beautiful piece. And there we go. And here we have his mummy, which was also in the Deir al-Bahri cache. And his coffin is not very fancy. Well, it doesn't have very much extra stuff. And he seemed to be a man in his 50s, but he actually at first it was a man in his 50s, and now it seems to be a man in his mid 30s. And his mummy is actually surprisingly, is not in the National Museum of Egyptian Civilization. It's actually down in the Luxor Museum, along with the mummy of the supposed Ramses the First, which is a whole other kit and caboodle story. Okay, so very briefly, I just want to talk about the other possible children of Ahhotep the First and Senkeneri-Tau. Ahmose Nefertari is probably going to be one of the most famous ones out of this because she is the great royal wife of Ahmose the First, and also may have become a regent for her son Amenhotep the First, and she was deified after her death. And you have this beautiful image of her from a tomb in Deir el-Medina. Yes, Book, what's the question? So it's hard to say. A lot of people have conquered Egypt over time. And I don't know if Mark is still here, but DNA wise, it's hard. I think there is some like relation, but like you have to understand that it's been thousands and thousands of years. And then the ancient Egyptians were raided and taken over by the Assyrians, the Nubians, the Persians twice, then the Greeks, and then the Romans. And then after ancient Egypt, they were then taken over by the Arabs, the Ottoman Empire, and Europeans and other countries in Africa. Like it is a melting pot of a lot of different cultures, a lot of Mediterranean cultures. And so it's hard to say. I will say culturally, most modern Egyptians do not relate to ancient Egyptians. They do not consider themselves their ancestors. And that's understandable because the vast majority of Egypt is Arabic. And so they can't relate. They don't understand and relate to it. Genetically, yes, they definitely could be and probably are at least slightly related to the ancient Egyptians, but it's kind of hard to genuinely compare it to. But no, very good question, Spook. So Ahmose Nefertari, there's so many Nefertiti queens. This is the first one. So she is not Nefertari, wife of Ramses the Great. She is Ahmose Nefertari. But she was a pretty prominent queen. She was deified for a little bit, and she is, again, one of the daughters of probably Ahhotep the First and Senkeneri-Tau. Yes, modern Coptic is a remnant of an ancient Egyptian language, but it is usually only spoke by Copts, and Copts in their religious settings, so in church, like Latin would be. But it is technically related to ancient Egyptian language. And I don't know if Coptic Egyptians relate more to ancient Egyptians. I would still say they probably don't, because it's completely different religion and cultural mindset. It's very, very different from ancient Egypt. So I don't know if they have a stronger affinity with them than the Arabic, Islamic Egyptians. I'm not sure. So I'm trying to see if there's anything. So these are all of her titles. Hereditary princess, great of grace, great of praises, king's mother, great king's wife, God's wife, united with the right white crown, king's daughter, and king's sister. So she's got a lot of them, which helps solidify her very well into make sure that she knows that, yes, she is one of possibly both of maybe it was Kamos's wife and then Ahmose's wife. But at least just one. She probably lived all the way up into the reign of Thutmose I as well. Possibly, again, was a regent for Amenhotep I, her son. That's so cool. She likely died in approximately the 5th or 6th year of Thutmose I. Her death is recorded on the stela of a Wab priest called Nefer. The text mentions that the divine consort Ahmes Nefertari, justified with the great god, Lord of the West, flew to, it says heaven, but it means flew to the sky. That's so interesting. But yeah, she was deified and she became mistress of the sky, or the Lady of the West. And she was also probably moved to Royal Cache DB20, although there is no identification marks with this mummy. This is supposedly her mummy. It's hard to tell. There's no identification marks, but this is possibly her mummy. No, you're very right, Spook. No, it's definitely... They see it as tourism. They don't identify with it. It's very much like, I've tried to describe this about myself. So ethnically, I am over half Irish, or I guess I am half Irish. My mother's grandfather was 100% Irish, and then her mother was a little majority Irish, but had a couple other things as well. But I was not raised in Ireland. I do not know Ireland. And my grandparents did not practice any sort of Irish traditions. Like, if I was growing up in Boston per se, and that Irish heritage is closer, I might have been raised with some of those things. And so I don't identify myself as Irish American, even though I know I technically could. But I identify closer with my father's side, which is Hungarian, because his parents immigrated from Hungary. And so I identify myself as a Hungarian American. But when you would look at my DNA, it would say that I am very small section Hungarian, and Hungarian's not even actually a section on the DNA set. Like, I'm Germanic, like, is the whole section that they give me, because they just don't identify distinctly anything with Hungary. And so it's all about, like, identity is a very personal thing, and it's very familial. And so if you are not raised in knowing anything about this culture, or knowing anything, like, you're just not going to identify it. You're not going to understand it. You're not going to say, those aren't my people. It's just not me. I am this. And you have all these histories of other places and stuff. I hope that makes sense. It's kind of hard to talk about sometimes. There's a lot of interesting imagery of Ahhotep Nefertari. She's in quite a few tombs. I didn't even realize she's in so many tombs in dear old Medina. This is a very good Wikipedia article. There's lots of stuff in here. All right, next one, very quickly. This is Ahmose Saper. He was a prince, probably the son of Senkeneritou, brother of Ahmose. We only have him on a couple different, like, monuments and such. And we know that we have shaptis and funerary linens of his, but there is a mummy that identifies as a 5 to 6 year old boy, and it might be him. So it is still known during the inspection of tombs. So he did have a tomb, which is interesting. In the 20th Dynasty, it was preserved. I gotta do a video about the Abbott Papyrus. That's very cool. But there is an image of him. Then we also have Ahmose Henut Epet, who was a princess. Again, probably the daughter of Senkeneritou and Ahhotep I. She did bear the title of King's daughter and King's sister. So that helps us kind of wedge her in there. And we do have her mummy from the Deir al-Bahri cache, now at the Egyptian Museum of Cairo. She died as an old woman. She was an old lady. She had gray hair and worn teeth. Her mummy was damaged probably by tomb looters, and we have an idea that it may have been moved into this area during, what time is this? This is, 22nd Dynasty, during the during the third intermediate period. But yeah, her mummy is not doing as well, you can see, but it looks like she's got a full wig on her lap. And then the last one, we don't even have an image. There is somebody called Amos Nebeta, was an Egyptian princess, probably the daughter again of Senkeneri-Tau and Ahhotep I. And she had, she actually may have married her brother Amos I, but her sister was the great royal wife. That's the key thing, is sometimes you would marry other siblings, but you would, only the head wife would get great royal wife title. She does have the titles King's Daughter and King's Sister, and there's a statue of her at the Louvre, which identifies her as King's Daughter, as King's Sister, and as the daughter of Ahhotep I. So that's very helpful. And then on a later, she is showed behind, oh, interesting. So she's possibly identified as a queen because there's an image of her on this huge list with all of these siblings. It's very interesting. I've never seen this image before. Do you also think, oh, I would have liked to live in the time? Yeah, no, it's definitely possible. There are definitely women and men in ancient Egypt who lived long, but it would be, yeah, you would live a very short, a comparatively shorter life back then. And as a woman, having children is a big risk for your health back then as well. So, okay, I think we've covered everything. I've covered all of that royal family line and that time period.